My name's Ellie. I am the founder of Sage Strategy Group. I started this company because I really love CX, like really love CX, so much so that I make my own buttons and I wear one each and every episode. Today's CXC pin is "You CXC thing." Ooh, yeah. And I'm serving really big CX energy today, and I needed a pin to help match that vibes. This podcast is called the CX Universe. It is a framework that I built to help companies understand what customer experience environment that they're operating in and why it's impacting their growth, churn, and team performance. Each episode, we break down a real company, score their customer experience, and map them to an archetype within the CX universe so that you, the listener, can see what type of archetype they have and where they fit into the CX universe. And then maybe you could see where you are. So today we are talking about Shopify and what happens when your marketing works better than your product. So if you're an entrepreneur, you've heard of Shopify. We've all signed up with the impression that we were going to create a really easy website in 2 seconds and Shopify will boost our business and it'd be the best decision that we ever made in our entire lives, right? However, I spent 5 years talking to over 100 entrepreneurs on a whole nother podcast, and I never once heard them mention Shopify, which made me think about what type of archetype do they have. Everybody knows about them. However, I've only heard of a handful of people who actually found a way to make Shopify work for them. And that's why I think they are the perfect candidate for this particular episode, right? So, before we get into Shopify, let's bring it back. Let's talk about what customer experience is and what it isn't. Customer experience is not just about how you support your product. It's not about how you get your customers to interact with that product. It is 100% about the full customer journey. It starts with that first touch point when you reach out to the customer, whether it's inbound or outbound marketing, sales, contacts, whatever you want to call it. And then it ends when the customer decides if they want to stay or leave or succeed. And making sure that these customers succeed with your product is the role of customer experience. So, whatever your customer journey is, if it doesn't match the expectations, then patterns start to form in the customer experience. And then this is when I can tell you need help getting your customers to succeed. So every company operates within one of these customer experience environments. And today we are placing Shopify inside the CX universe to identify what environment it is in and what it's costing them. There's an archetype called the Mirage. And the Mirage is very special. And it's special because this is when marketing works better than the actual experience. Now, most people struggle with marketing. Most businesses struggle with marketing, have the whole back end ready to go, but have absolutely no way of converting a customer, right? However, the Mirage archetype, they can get a customer. They just can't wow them. They get them in the door, they get them to buy with them maybe once or twice, but the people always leave feeling disappointed is the best word that I can find right now. But here are some other characteristics of this particular archetype. You see a lot of strong acquisition, very clear messaging, very high conversion. But once the customers get inside, things start to feel a lot harder than they expected. Setup takes longer, results take more effort, and support starts stepping in just to manage expectations and not to actually help them succeed, right? So, like always, I like to ground any of my arguments in numbers, right? Okay, so let's start with this. Shopify is not broke. Okay. Nor is it going broke. It is not close to going broke. They generated over $11 billion in 2025 and continue to grow. So this is not about financial failure in the least. They're not financially failing. They're not. This is about what's happening underneath that growth. To jump from 8 to almost $12 billion in a year, there was some growth. There was some friction. There were some things they forgot when all that money came up. Imagine if somebody just dropped that many billions of dollars into your lap. There's some things you're gonna forget about just out of pure excitement. So same thing happened to Shopify. And it's that I like to discover what's happening underneath that growth, because that is 100% where you are able to find those missed customer opportunities. All right. And to verify which environment it's in and which archetype it has, I like to use the CX scorecard. And it's a scorecard where we scale from 0 to 10, 0 meaning terrible, 10 meaning wonderful. And we look at 4 different categories. We look at reviews because it shows us the lifetime value of your customers. Is it going up or down? Do people like staying with you? Do they not? Outages. We like to check and make sure that you keep things running. That keeps everybody's trust really high. And if you can make sure the platform is running without outages, you've run half the battle. I like to check to see if you're doing any type of customer experience hiring, because if you are hiring for support, that means you're ready to fix some of the issues that you're having. But it also means that your support is, you're trying to offload the poor onboarding with more support. Like, hey, we'll just get more people to explain why it's so bad instead of fixing why it's so bad. That's why I look at customer experience hiring. And the last thing is communication. We all like proactive versus reactive communication. So let's get started with scoring Shopify using the CX scorecard. So first thing that we took a look at reviews, and they got a 7 out of 10. The reason why they got a 7 out of 10 is because I kept seeing 3 major warnings. Regardless of on G2 them having a 4.4 out of 5 with 5,000 different reviews, I was getting the same 3 themes. First one, this is an expensive platform. Second one, customer service is very slow. And the third one, which was not the only common one, another one is presented here, but there is very limited customization depending on what subscriber level you subscribe to. And everybody knows that you want to get the most bang out of your buck, and it doesn't seem like Shopify is giving that to their customers. So let's look at this verify user in apparel fashion, and let's see what they had to say. The first thing that they had to say was that Shopify just takes your money but does not provide a secure platform. And so it looks like they reached out to customer support. However, they were still experiencing viruses and malware, and there was really nothing that they could do. They ended up getting scammed, and then their account was shut down. This is a terrible instance because this person is clearly a verified user. They have an apparel fashion brand, which does so well on Shopify. This is where you want to be if you have an apparel or fashion brand. And they just couldn't get it to work. Not because they weren't understanding what the platform was. It just kept getting viruses, right? And then they felt like Shopify took their money because they were doing everything quote unquote right, but they were still having issues. Not leaving a happy customer. So on outages, because of what our verified user said, I really dug into outages because it seems like there's a misconnect, which is why I gave them a 5 out of 10. If you go to the status page on Shopify, you see all systems operational, which is wonderful. It's what you want to see. What you don't see is what happened in the past. And what you also don't see is what's going on with individual accounts. Now, there might be a bug that's affecting a group of people, but as long as it's not affecting Shopify, the platform itself, it does not go on the status page. That's insane. Also, Shopify is too big to have an outage. Shopify handles more than 10% of all e-commerce transactions in the US. That's incredible. But that also comes with a lot of pressure because if you mess up, that's a lot of stores going down. And that's exactly what happened on Cyber Monday of 2025. They had an outage. Merchants couldn't log in and couldn't pay. What? So even Shopify lost money. And you know this was big because this turned up on CNBC. Okay? So this is definitely one of those reputation companies where they're so big that any one of these small, quote unquote, small instances could actually lead to terrible results. And with them not having their systems up on Cyber Monday in the US is basically virtual Black Friday. This was a lot of money down the drain. And because there was a lot of money down the drain, Shopify's stock went down. It went down because of this issue. So again, this is one of those companies where outages is just not acceptable. They're not easily forgiven. And because of that, we have to score them quite harshly here because the rest of the world does as well. Giving them a 5. All right. So when we look at support, we are now looking at another hole that Shopify seems to have. If we look up at the top, Alex K let us know that he was very unhappy. He said there is a horrible attitude towards horrible customer service. I bet you he was about to go all caps when he just decided to put his exclamation point at the end. This is not a happy customer, you guys. 0 out of 5 is a really hard score to get. Okay. And so this just means that support is an issue. I've seen comments like this throughout G2. This was not the first one discussing how slow customer support was or how it didn't really solve their problem. Or like we saw earlier, he talked to support. They were great. However, I'm, still out of an account, right? And so we can see that Shopify has acknowledged the fact that they are having some support issues because they're hiring roles. They're not just hiring roles in one area, they're hiring roles across the world, Singapore, Canada, Americas, and Ireland. And some of these positions that they're hiring for directly involve some of those low scores. The account security is definitely something that our verified user was complaining about. And the support manager is definitely something that's going to help out Alex K with customer experience that he was having. Well, as we hope, right? So the last thing that we take a look at is communication. And I look at communication because outages, reviews, all these things are readily available. Like I did today, I just Google searched and I found all this information, right? So you need communication for these things so that people don't Google search and run wild. And it looks like Harley Finkelstein does just that. He's very active when it comes to talking about the new features that they're adding and the purposes, how to use it, those types of things. And even during the outage, he spoke out directly to talk about how they were working on a fix and were able to do it quickly. Having the CEO come and tell you that I understand that there's a problem, we're going to fix it, does numbers for your customer base, for your trust score, is for your communication score here. Because just saying acknowledging that there was a problem is wonderful. The reason why they got a 7 out of 10 was because even in this article, as we see down here, he's got a lot to say about this agentic artificial intelligence that they're using for their e-commerce merchants. However, he's not addressing who would have access to this, like what subscriber level. He's not addressing the fact that there's already customer support issues, that this could create some more. He's not talking about the fact that most of their poor reviews are related to his platform having bugs or issues, outages, pricing. There's a lot of different things that are slowly eating away that he's just not addressed. And so that's why I gave him a 7. So altogether, if we take a look at this CX score, they got a 6 out of 10. And to go through that again, we gave them a 7 in reviews, 5 in outages, 5 in CX hiring, and 7 in communication. He had really harsh 1-star reviews. He had a big, huge outage. Shopify had a huge outage, which brought down the trust. And then they are known in their 1-star reviews for having poor customer service, which is leading to them having open customer experience roles. And then the last thing is their communication. They do proactively communicate. However, they don't fully address any of the complaints that I saw in the comments. So what does 6 out of 10 mean in the CX universe? The CX universe is a score. You're trying to get to this golden engine, a 9 out of 10. So that means a 6 for us means that they're in a friction zone. Shopify is in a friction zone. That means that growth is getting expensive. Because so many people have used their platform, it's harder to, it's going to take more money to reach new faces. And then also because so many people have used the platform and didn't enjoy it, they either have to spend a massive amount of money to get those people back on their platform, or they need to spend money to get the people who are staying to continue to stay. So while we're on the subject of money, let's go ahead and let's take a look. Actually, I'm jumped ahead of myself. First, we're gonna look at internal and external point of view. I love numbers, you guys. That's why I skipped ahead. Let's talk about this first because it's a very important part. Internally, they are telling the people who work there that we are giving entrepreneurs everything that they need to start a business online for free, right? They give you 3 months for $1. You're good. You should be able to make it, right? We're giving you all the tools. We've done everything that you need. But then here we have an actual user, Eric W. at the bottom saying key features and company data locked behind a paywall, shady data practices. So this means that he is a business owner. He did use this platform. He was trying to use it for free, but then all his stuff got stuck behind a paywall. And so that means that there's something that happens in between that trial period and that the date into that paid time where something's miscommunicated. He didn't understand that he was going to lose all of his data if he didn't pay you guys. Also, what is that? Are you threatening? It's crazy. I can completely see why Eric W is upset because, excuse me, you're just going to hold my stuff like it's not mine. That was another thing I read in there. Read Shopify's terms. They kind of own your stuff as long as it's on there. Just saying, please take a look at the terms, understand what Shopify owns and what you own as a business owner. Just a little tip. Anyway, Shopify's archetype is called the Mirage. And the reason why we call it the Mirage is because people are getting really excited about something very beautiful. You see, it's glass, it's gorgeous. You're going to walk in, but when you walk out, you're sad and it's empty and there's nothing going on but the desert in there, right? And so I'm not saying that's what's happening on Shopify. I am just saying that this is how customers are feeling. They're coming in very excited, but not a lot of them are reaching success And that is how I know that you are having a customer experience issue. Now, let's talk about costs, but only in a way where it actually matches how Shopify makes money. So, how does Shopify make money? It doesn't make money just off from users existing. So, I'm going to make that very clear. It makes money if those users actually succeed in sell and process transaction. This is what they need, right? And Shopify has over 5.5 million active stores, right? But not all of those stores are active or successful at the same level. And this is what's costing them a lot of money, right? So, if we assume about 30% of stores are low activity or fail to fully launch, which is quite common in e commerce, that's roughly about 1.6 million stores not reaching meaningful revenue. So now let's say conservatively that Shopify earns an average of $1,000 per year per low activity merchant across their subscriptions, apps, and small transaction volume. That leads to 1.6 million times 1,000, which gives us this $1.6 billion that you see here in a reduction in revenue. And it's really a reduction because this is how much revenue is underperforming for you, right? It's just under leverage. These are people that could be making you more money, right? But they're not because they're not doing that well. And so, because of that, you are missing out on about $1.6 billion just because you have not set up a undeniable system for your customers to succeed. Next, I want to talk about transaction volume. If your customers don't succeed, um, then there's no transaction volume. And this is where Shopify really scales. Shopify processed over to $235 billion in gross merchandise volume. If onboarding friction and all of these unrealistic expectations reduce merchant performance by just 5%, right? So we're talking about those people who are doing okay, right? But all this confusion and stuff makes them just hop off. If it reduces merchant performance by 5%, right? That's fewer sales per store, slower ramp up time, earlier drop off, right? That's 235 billion multiplied by 5%, which gives you $11.75 billion in suppressed merchant sales. If that's not already crazy, like if that doesn't get you moving, get you out your seat, I don't know what else to do for you. Okay. Shopify only takes a small percentage of all of that money, all of that $11 billion that was made on their platform, right? But even at an average of about 2% of those sales, it's $235 million in missed revenue tied directly to experience gaps. Now, you go and you tell the CEO of Shopify that he is missing out on $235 million and tell me he doesn't perk his ears up. It matters. All this stuff matters. It compounds. And okay, on top of that, we are saying that there is a cost to their expert mode onboarding, right? It's so hard for people to get started. And because of that, they have to ramp up support. What's the cost of ramping up support? Support actually costs around 8% of the revenue. So 11 billion multiplied times 8% equals $880 million, right? So if all of this keeps extending, we keep having problems, we keep needing to hire new people, we are going to say that the support demand is going to be about 10% of that $880 million, right? So that means $88 million is just going to go to support. It could have been used for other reasons. You could have built another feature. You could have done something else with that money. However, you have to spend that money just answering questions, right? And so let's look at man hours. What does this cost for us to have unused features? Because almost everything in Shopify is behind a paywall. And also because there's this lack of adoption across most SaaS companies. About 70% of these features are going to go unused, right? So if we're saying that Shopify invests about 20% of its revenues back into their product and their ecosystem development, that's 11 billion multiplied by 20%, which is about $2.2 billion. If 30% of that goes underutilized, right? So it's $2.2 billion to make the tech, and then we're going to not use 30% of that, then that's 2.2 billion multiplied by 30%, which gives you $660 million that you invested in a product that is not returning any value. It's a lot of money, right? So when you put all of this together, that's a $2.6 billion at risk. 2.6 billion with a B dollars at risk, simply because of your customer experience. Now, if you didn't understand why CX was such a big deal, you should now. And it shouldn't be taken lightly. CX is about performance. And now we see that less than optimal performance can really cost you many, okay? Because lower activation leads to weaker merchants. Weaker merchants leads to lower transaction volumes. Lower transaction volumes lead to less revenue captured. No merchants, no money, right? So treat your merchants nice so you have money, right? So in total, you're looking at hundreds of millions in direct revenue impact and billions in the suppressed ecosystem performance. And it's all tied back to the experience not matching the promise. And that's the true cost of the Mirage archetype. So if your company is having a really super easy time selling, but it's having a much harder time keeping their customers engaged, and managing expectations, they're having a hard time getting results. Your team is constantly trying to bridge the gap between what was promised and what's being experienced. It's not random. You don't have a growth problem. You have a customer experience problem. So every company operates inside an environment that's within the CX universe. And whether you've named it or not, it's already shaping your customer experience, your churn, and your resume. Your revenue. You've seen it. So if you don't know which environment you're in, if you don't know your archetype, you're already paying for it. That's exactly why I built Sage Strategy Group, is to help companies move from guessing to diagnosing and then to actually fixing the environment so that they can always succeed. And that's what the CX Universe framework does. It shows you exactly what customer experience game you're playing and how to win it. So if today's episode felt a little familiar, then there's a huge chance that you are operating within the Mirage archetype. If you don't know, you want to be sure, go ahead and take our quiz. The link is on the screen right here, and you will be able to find your own archetype for your own business. And I want you guys to stay tuned, because next week we're getting into something a little different. This is the over-decorated palace. And this is when there's so much stuff on the wall. Your customer doesn't really know what to do with it. And because of that, they don't stay. Right? So I want you guys to get excited to hear more about the over-decorated palace archetype. And I will see you guys in the very next episode. Bye.